Hi class, in today's lesson we are going to talk about the circulatory system. So the circulatory system you might know a little bit better as the cardiovascular system, right? It's the system that is made up of your heart and all of your blood vessels, right? So cardio means heart. Vascular means the blood vessels, your arteries and your veins. And then of course, your blood, which is in your arteries and your veins. So this is a little bit of a long lesson. We're going to talk about the main functions, the main parts, and then we're going to go into each part and look at it more closely. So let's begin. So your circulatory system is there to circulate, right? To make things be able to transport around your body. It's like the highway system, but inside of you. So its functions are to circulate nutrients like oxygen, glucose, vitamins, minerals, and water to the body's cells, right? So nutrients, remember, from Unit 1 are things that your body needs so that you can live and so that your cells can do their jobs. Okay, so we have nutrients, and then your cells will use those nutrients in chemical reactions, and then some of the things that they make are going to be useful for the cell or useful for some other part of your body, and some of the things will be left over and unusable. So that we call those wastes, right? The wastes that are in your body that your cell makes are a little bit different than the waste that we eliminate when we go to the toilet, right? So, for example, when you do cellular respiration, you need two things. You need oxygen and glucose. And at the end of that, you get energy for your body. But you also have two other products that your cell might not be able to use. One is carbon dioxide, right? So we need to be able to remove that from the cells and put it back in your lungs so you can breathe it out. And the water will also leave the cell, and it will circulate in your blood. And then you can eliminate the water in your body a few ways through your kidneys, and then it becomes urine, or maybe you will sweat it out. And then usually when the cell does chemical reactions, they produce heat, which is good because you use that heat to heat your body. But also you might make too much heat, so that is the heat will heat your blood. And then eventually the blood will get somewhere close to the surface of your body, and then the heat will radiate outwards, right? Which is why you are warm to the touch. And then hormones. Hormones are chemical messengers that our cells make. So if your cell wants to communicate with other cells that are either nearby or far away in your body, it can release chemical messengers. And the chemical messengers are really, really cool because only some cells can read them. So they're like secret messages. If they have the right receptor, they can read them. But if they don't have the right receptor, they won't read these messages. So your cells make these targeted messages that can be sent to a specific part of the body and read there, and then the cell will change its behavior based on receiving this chemical message. So those are called hormones, and they can create some big changes in your body. Slow changes, but big changes. So like puberty, for example, is controlled by hormones. So those are the three functions of the circulatory system. And then we have the components. So that your circulatory system is made up of blood. You have red blood cells, you have white blood cells, you have platelets and you have plasma. So those are the four parts of the blood. We're going to talk about blood. You can see at the bottom of the screen. We're going to talk about blood shortly, and we're going to talk about what each of those parts do and how they relate to each other, etc., etc. After that, we're going to talk about blood vessels, so your veins. Venules are small veins. Your arteries. Arterioles are small arteries. And capillaries are the teeny tiniest of your blood vessels. And we're going to talk about the pathway of blood throughout your body, and some other concepts related to that. And then we're going to talk about your heart. So let's begin with the blood. So your blood has four main components. It has red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and plasma. Okay, so this diagram up at the top shows you all of the different types of blood cells, right? So there's three main categories. So we have platelets, we have red blood cells, and we have white blood cells. As you can see, there are more than one type of white blood cell, and we'll talk a little bit about them just briefly, just so you have an overview. So red blood cells are the ones that are important for transporting oxygen. Okay, so they are packed with iron-containing proteins called hemoglobin, right? So hemoglobin is a little blob-shaped protein, and because it has iron in it. Iron isn't a normal component of proteins. You remember when we looked at proteins, we learned that they were made out of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Okay, but sometimes proteins can have other elements join with them, and this one has iron with it. Iron, normally we think of iron as sort of a silver color, but when iron is oxidized, like when it rusts, it becomes sort of an orangey, reddy, browny color, right? For example, the planet Mars, right, is covered in oxidized iron, and that's why it's a red planet. Here, because it's a part of hemoglobin, and because it's the part of the hemoglobin that accepts oxygen, right, it's oxidized all the time, and that's why your red blood cells are red, is because it's the iron. Now, they'll be different color depending on how oxidized they are. So when you have blood that is oxygen rich, you'll notice that it's more orangey. And if you have blood that is oxygen poor, it's going to be more like purpley, sort of. So you'll see in the diagrams, sometimes we draw the blood as blue, but that's just to indicate that the oxygen is low. It never is actually blue. The next time you cut yourself, if you think about it, take a look at what color blood comes out. You'll notice that if it comes out rather quickly, it's almost always bright red, and that's your oxygenated blood. And if it comes out slowly, you've probably hit a vein and you get more purpley blood, right? So the orangey one, lots of oxygen in it. The purpley one, not so much. So red blood cells carry oxygen to body cells to be a reactant in cellular respiration, right? Your cells need a constant supply of oxygen because they're constantly doing cellular respiration, even when you're asleep, to make energy to do whatever the cell does, right? So the cells in your pancreas make hormones and make digestive enzymes, right? And that's their job, and they do that even while you're sleeping. So you need a constant supply of energy to do that, so your cells are always doing cellular respiration. Now, because they're always doing cellular respiration, and carbon dioxide is a waste product of cellular respiration, it constantly needs to be carried away and exhaled. Right, so you're always making carbon dioxide as a waste product of making energy by your cells. Red blood cells also have a fancy name. They're called erythrocytes. Erythro is a word that means red, and cytes is a word that means cells. So erythrocytes is really just a fancy way of saying red blood cells. You can get some diseases of your red blood cells. So if you have a low amount of red blood cells, or you have low iron in a lot of your red blood cells, so they can't make as much hemoglobin, you have what's called anemia. There's lots of different types of anemia, right? So sometimes anemia means you have low iron and your red blood cells are not making enough hemoglobin. And sometimes it means that you have a low red blood cell count, okay? So anemia is basically anything that would interfere with your blood carrying oxygen, being able to carry oxygen to your cells. There's also sickle cell anemia, which is slightly different. Sickle cell anemia is caused by a mutation in your DNA. So remember, your DNA contains the recipes for all the proteins in your body. And the sickle cell anemia causes a different shape of protein in your red blood cells, which causes them to be shaped like a half moon. So you can see the red blood cells are these, it's a very interesting shape. It's the shape of a Werther's Original, right? The butterscotch candy, so it's like an oval, but it's got sort of like a pinch in the middle. It's the middle is indented. And it's a very unusual shape. No shape is really like that of cells other than red blood cells. We call it a pinched disc shape, right? So somebody has taken an oval and just pinched it with their fingers. Sickle cell anemia, because it makes a protein that's the wrong shape, is the shape of a sickle. A sickle is basically moon-shaped, right? A sickle is like a big fancy knife for a cutting device that is moon-shaped. So sickle cell anemia means that these cells are shaped like sickles or moons. And then they don't carry oxygen as well, and they can also get stuck in your bloodstream and cause tears and stuff like that. People who have anemia and sickle cell anemia, because they're not getting a lot of oxygen to their cells, they are likely to experience fatigue because they can't make enough energy. So if you know somebody with sickle cell anemia, sometimes they can't go out with you on the weekends just because they're too tired and they need extra rest so they don't use up too much energy. White blood cells are part of your immune system and part of your blood. What they do is they fight infection, and you have lots of different types. Each of them has a role in a different role in the immune system. So you have neutrophils. Neutrophils are up here in the center. Neutrophils basically signal that there are invaders. So what happens is if you have, like, say, a bacterial infection, all of your neutrophils will gather at the site of the bacterial infection, right? So they're there to mark that something that is foreign to the body is there. So unsurprisingly, they're the main ingredient of pus, because pus happens when your immune system surrounds like a bacterial invader, right? Yeah, next time you have some sort of infection and you have pus, recognize the job of the neutrophil. Now you have also eosinophils. These ones here, they fight parasites and they're responsible for allergic reactions. Okay, so they are responsible for basically the inflammation part of your, they're responsible for immune response to like foreign entities, right? So if you have allergies, what's happened is you kind of have overactive eosinophils for a certain type of invader, right? Something that isn't really an invader, but your body thinks is an invader. Basophils, which are the first one, they're responsible for inflammation. So when you get a cut or a burn, or you get an infection and it causes swelling, right? Anything where your body is swollen, that's sort of basophils in action. And of course, the swelling of the cells is something that will sometimes kill off invaders. You have lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are here. Those are your beta cells and your T cells. They kill invading bacteria and viruses. If you have an immune disorder, like, for example, HIV or AIDS, they monitor these cells really, really closely. When you have an infection, they go up like crazy, right? So there's something, if somebody is trying to see if you have an infection, they'll take a look at your lymphocytes and see if they're elevated, or if you have, like, they suspect an autoimmune disorder, they're gonna see if they're unusually low. And then monocytes remove dead cells. So these guys will eat up cells that are no longer functional in your body, and the lysosomes will release digestive enzymes, and they'll sort of recycle the cell parts. Another name for white blood cells is leukocytes, right? Leuko means white, and cytes still means cells, so leukocytes means white cells. You can get diseases in your white blood cells, such as lymphoma and leukemia. Lymph is referring to your lymphatic system, right? So white blood cells sort of integrate with your lymphatic system and your blood system and your immune system, right? So the lymphatic system and the circulatory system have tubes that go all around your body, and all of them and your immune system play a role when you're sick. Lymphoma and leukemia are two types of white blood cell cancers. Basically, what would happen if they suspect? So cancer is, as we learned, right, when your cells divide over and over and over again and they can't make themselves stop, and then they don't do their jobs because they're so busy dividing, right? So if you have these cancers, you're going to notice that you're getting sick a lot, because your white blood cells are not doing their job. And then when they run a blood test, they'll see that you have way more white blood cells than normal, right? And they might look odd. Like they might, you can see the white blood cells up in our picture have a little bit of a different shape from each other. And if they're always dividing, they never quite get to their proper adult shape where they do their job. So they might look weird as well. So they can do a blood test, and they can just, by counting and comparing the number of white blood cells that you have to the normal number of white blood cells, maybe if you have cancer or not. Platelets are little teeny tiny blood cells compared to the white blood cells are the biggest. The red blood cells are sort of a little bit smaller, but the platelets are usually very, very tiny, and they're like little Band-Aids, right? So they create blood clots and scabs, and they stop the bleeding after the injury. So when you have a cut, all of these platelets will rush to the site of your bleeding, and they make like a little plug, and they mix with a protein called fibrinogen. They mix with a protein, and the protein sort of wraps around them and sticks them together, and then it plugs the hole, basically. Another name for platelets is thrombocytes. Thrombo means clotting, and cytes still mean cells, so they're clotting cells. You can get diseases related to clotting. So hemophilia is a it is a disease that changes the shape of one of the proteins that causes the clots to form. So people with hemophilia, whenever they get a cut, they're unable really to form clots. So this is a big problem because somebody with hemophilia can cut himself shaving and he can bleed for 6 hours, right? And it's also a big problem if, for example, they need dental surgery or even regular surgery. If they get cut, it takes them a very, very long time to heal. So a big medical condition, right? Because you need your blood to live. And there's also thrombocythemia. Thrombocythemia is when your blood is too good at making clots. So it will make clots even if there's no cut around, or it will make too much of a clot, and part of the clot will peel off inside of your blood vessels and eventually might clog them up. And so if your blood vessels get clogged, if it's in your heart, you could have a heart attack. If it's in your brain, you could have a stroke. If it's in any other part of your body, that part could go without oxygen for a long time, and then it could kill all of the cells there. So, really dangerous conditions, because you really need to be able to stop bleeding, but not stop the flow of blood. And then you have your plasma. Plasma is the liquidy part of blood that's fluid. It contains mostly water. It also contains proteins that are going around your body, including hormones. It contains electrolytes. Electrolytes are basically minerals in ion form. We learned about them in the first unit. Nutrients like glucose, amino acids, lipids, vitamins, and then some waste like urea. So the red blood cells are really there for transporting oxygen and carbon dioxide, and everything else sort of dissolves in the plasma. So here we have the self-check homework for you to do. Each part has a picture that you can look at and a bunch of questions that you can fill in the blanks. I will put the answers up on the website for you to be able to check your work. And then we have the next lesson.